Hello, my name is Shirley, and the first question is, what do you see as the pros and cons of using Zoom, the internet, for the virtual staffing or given corporate operations? The pros for using Zoom or the internet staffing is, I think for the pros um, increase um, it increased flexibility for the team. It increased flexibility because the team can work, any employees or whoever could work from anywhere in the world if they assess, and which it supports the flexibility schedule, and it balances their work life, but they could balance their work life. And for the companies, they could, they are no longer limited. There are more, they're no longer limited by, a certain geographic, or where they could hire a certain area, so they could, locate and get the best talent from anywhere. And it also reduce it also reduce expenses to, to have like an office space for the employee, um, bills like water, utilities, and for them to travel and relocation, which in that case, even the employees are saving gas and stuff from going to the office. And it also gives like a faster. It also helps with hiring and onboarding, which is a virtual interview and a digital onboarding process. It could, it helps to streams and equipment timelines. Business can keep the operation running smoothly as well during disruptions, and they and even doing and even, having, like, for example, having like a pandemic or a natural disaster, they could still work because it's online. You don't have to be physically in the office for that. Um, some example of the cons or communication could barrier, like virtual interaction can sometimes lead to misunderstanding, and especially if it's like a fast-paced um, minute discussion, online. Sometimes it could be hard for someone to hear if they don't have the proper um, headsets, or if they have something wrong going with their laptop. The building, I think, another comment could be, the building company could, it could, or the building company culture could frustrate teamwork, which is will be more, challenging without having an in-person interaction. And it could also, and it will depend on a stable internet to secure like a platform, which is in to secure a platform that any failure can cause major delays or breaches to help. But managing a global team means, you will have to juggling from different working hours, and which could also affect the response and times collaboration within the employees, because some people might have a different time zones, which could be a problem with that. But overall, the remote workers may feel also the remote workers could feel, isolated, to be connected, to actually to or less connected to the company mission and goals, because they're not able to, have like a hands-on, have to be able to work hands-on within the company to see the company for what it is. But seeing it behind the screen, behind a computer and stuff, it does make them less connected to it. For question two, I have, why is it often very difficult for supervisors in any culture to give employees a negative performance appraisal? I think I would say, I think, supervisors often worry about giving negative feedback because they don't want to, they don't want to, because they have to be professional. Sorry. I think that supervisors often worry that negative feedback will harm, professionally and relationship that they create, or it could be attention as well. But in an environment where collaborations and team, or essentially work together, but you also have to be honest, which the conversation sometimes can be risky to have. Some emotional, I could say some emotional discomfort that they will go through is, when providing a feedback that can be emotionally taken. Many supervisors, many supervisors often feel uncomfortable because they feel like they don't want to put stress or discourage the worker. They don't want to push to discourage the worker, especially if the employee is well-meaning, or they trying, and the emotional barrier that could lead to that could overly soften the feedback. Many managers also, many managers also, many managers also promoted for their technical skills, rather their hard leadership ability, without having proper training and performance. I think without having proper training and performance management or communication strategies, supervisors could struggle to structure and deliver a feedback in a way where it's clear and it's not constructive or hurting the person that they're saying it to. For the cultural norms, like the cultural direction, I think a culture plays a major role because of how the feedback could be communicated in some cultures, such as, like I could say, in some cultures, such as those, like, for example, in some cultures, like I would say, Latin America, or some, where direct criticism maybe seem disrespectful because of how they will take it, and humiliating, encouraging supervisors to take, I think supervisors should have like a training or like an indirect overlying diplomatic approach where they know, in response or in contracts that more direct cultures, like the U.S., may encourage, in a condition, in a candidate where its managers often, hesitated to be too, they hesitated to be too blunt with the customer. With the employee, and then they will fear that whatever they sell them will be harsh for them to tell the employee. Third question is, disability law statutes through the world generally require employees to make reasonable accommodation in the workplace for employees that are disabled in the world of U.S. sports, for example. What type of accommodation do you think professional baseball, football, or basketball teams should be required to make for players that suffer some form of documented disability? Yes, disability. For Yes, disability laws like the American, with disability, that requires employees to make reasonable accommodation for employees with disability to be able to work. And I think as long as it doesn't create a major difficulty or change the job to match that too much. And I would say in professionals like the sport um, industry, it could be a tricky, since since physical ability is a big part of the job. Like, for instance, playing basketball, football, but some accommodation can still. I think there are some accommodation that can still be made to bring the disability people are part of. For example, I think that having training schedules for them to you modify the training schedules, giving them extra rest because they would need more rest than a normal person. In some cases, giving them extra rest or flexible practice routines that flexible practice for players, with health conditions. They can also allow the players to, to use their tools, like they need to use the braces to their braces to practice during their game. They could, and they could also make the changing room, locker room, training areas like like a more accommodation and accessible for the players with, if they have wheelchairs or mobility issues, if they have to use wheelchairs or braces to walk through, so they could have more space. Another thing that I think that would be more important as well is having a therapist or counseling for them. Therapist counseling on time for players, to deal with their mental health if they, happen to feel, low or sad. So these people will be there to help them with their anxiety or depression that they might feel while being there. And some people in providing, a sign language, because some people it could just not be a physical thing that they're being, but having a sign language, being able to not talk or they speak sign language is also something that the employer has to have. And so providing, sign language interpreters to use other tools for players who are, deaf or hard that can hear, deaf or hard of hearing, that could, communicate with them and make them feel a part. Question. It can help them feel a part, and they they don't require, and they aren't required to keep players who can't physically meet the demand of the sport, but they don't have to change the rules of the game as well. They could, interact and make a spot for them. My last question is, so why not every disability can be accommodated in pro sport teams? No, sorry. Question 4 is, what are some ways global authorities may be able to better protect against the use of abusive child labor in countries throughout the world? I think ways that they could protect against, child labor is some countries should, some countries should have a law that ban their child labor, because especially if it's like a dangerous job, the child shouldn't be working, and the government of those countries should, they should also enforce the laws that are expected on the workplace by punishing or giving them violation if they letting a child work. And they should also organize, something, because some child work, because they have some child labor in different countries, just because they're they trying to, some child works and they happen to be in this child abusement, is because sometimes they trying to help their parents. Their parents are not able to work. It could be, for example, their parents could be sick, have a disability where they can physically work, and the child is forced to work at a younger age to help and survive. And where it sometimes they can't even make it to school because they don't have the time, or schools could be too much money to pay for, or they're not able to, their parents are not able to help them, and they're not able to come up with the money to be able to work and go to school as well. So I think many children, that are in that situation work is because sometimes it's because of how the culture, their countries is set up, and the payment, and how there's no job for them to work. So some of the awarenesses that I think people should do is, they could, have public campaigns that help the communities, that could help parents and employees understand, the harmful effects when having a child work, and for some cases have some free education or putting things at a certain level, providing government assistance to those who need it, so the child wouldn't have to be in this situation.